feel so free here at the ocean. Nobody can tell me what to do, who to be. I just watch the waves go in and out. But out there in the world, there are people who are being sex trafficked. And today, we are not only going to hear about the inside scoop in trafficking and what it's like, but we're going to hear about what it's like for sex workers. No, life is not easy. But growing and learning a little bit more information every day is icing on the cupcake. Welcome to the Life in Red podcast. This is a way of life that emphasizes positive sexuality, self-love, and confidence. On this journey, red is now your new color. Be courageous. Be passionate. Be sexy. And never stop living your best red life. So now I have one question for you. Are you ready to live your life in red? To join us on this journey, like and subscribe below.
It's like there's a witch hunt for sex, and I find it fascinating. And so now I know we have talked, I'm going to segue into the laws. You talked earlier about, if you could repeat it, about an act or a law that was passed that has made things kind of rough for the sex workers. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, FOSTA-SESTA, it was passed, 2018, I think it was. And essentially what it is it put a lot of protections with like bunny quotes for people that were in the internet. And the idea was that they were going to make it harder for people to sell sex on the internet, people to vet clients on the internet, things like that. And the hope was that it was going to cause less trafficking. They were really, really intent on going after specific sites that they felt were having sex trafficking on them. So Backpage.com was a really big one. And Backpage was a website where sex workers would go on there and they would vet their clients. They were able to look at their identification, do background checks, things like that before they worked with a client. And when FOSTA-SESTA passed, almost immediately we saw people unable to vet on Backpage. In fact, Backpage got shut down. And all of a sudden we were seeing on social media where you couldn't be posting specific content. And if you did, your pages would get shut down on social media. Mm-hmm. We also saw banks and banking discrimination. All of a sudden, banks were shutting down people's bank accounts if they felt like what they were doing because of the transactions that they were having, if they felt like those were related to sex work at all. And to this day, this happens in the United States. People will get their bank account shut down, and then the banks will take their money. And so they're left with this really, really horrific situation where all of a sudden they're facing houselessness, right? And when they had like a good savings in the bank and things like that. So almost overnight, we saw all of these restrictions happen to sex workers. And the idea was that they would limit sex trafficking. But what they actually did was they pushed sex trafficking even down deeper and darker. And it was even more hidden. And they were actually opening up more people to exploitation and more people to harm. And we saw more deaths and more assaults, and it's been really, really horrific. The intent was to help people, and what they actually did was hurt and harm and kill people. It's really unfortunate. And, you know, to this day, they're still trying to pass laws that are so much like it, like these age verification laws. We're seeing something called the Earn It Act, which sex workers are calling FOSTA-SESTA 2.0, where they're trying to make even more limitations on the internet. And what's interesting is not only is it going against free speech and the ability for us to do what it is that we want to, like with our bodies and our voices, right, on the internet, but it's also making it so that folks are not able to accurately assess who they're meeting with. And so when sex workers now have clients and the client's being really shifty and kind of, you know, weird, they don't know, well, is the client being weird because they're scared of being arrested, or is it because they're a scary person? And so it's harder and harder to vet people to make sure that they're safe.
Right.
So, right. Because of that, we see so much harm being done. And really what happens is when you do not have sex workers at the table, when you're trying to have and pass legislation that you think is going to be helpful, you will have harmful legislation. You will, because you're not making sure that the people at the table have experience in what you're trying to protect them against.
Well, it's like they look at cause and effect only so far down the chain of the ripple effect. They're looking at the surface of it, it seems like. And it's like, oh, on the surface, this will help this. They're not looking at cause and effect, but this affects this and this and this and that. Well, you just got the vote. Congratulations. Mr. White House, you know? So it's, you're killing people. And I think we see that in politics a lot. Is there, you know, going into politics, is there a side that is supporting this legislation that is for the sex workers, helping them so we can reduce this? Is there anything going on pro, or are we still kind of just, are they getting hit in the opposite direction?
Yeah, I don't see, I see it on both sides of the aisle where folks are creating harmful legislation and trying to pass harmful legislation. There are some folks in politics and within policy and legislation that they are really actively trying to make forward movement to protect and create safety for sex workers, but there's so few of them. I mean, there's like a handful of people that are actually really trying to make sure that there is a safer world for these people. And unfortunately, like panic and fear mongering, it's always going to win. But then you have companies like Facebook and you have companies like Instagram and things like that. And they have tons of thousands of instances of trafficking on their sites, but we're not seeing people going after them as hard as they are for these porn companies that they are actually working really hard to make sure that there isn't trafficking on their sites. And what ends up being the main thing for me is, oh, well, it's because it's porn. It's this like fight against porn. And we see that a lot within politics and policies. People will say like, well, porn is bad. Porn is harming us. Porn is bad. Porn is causing trafficking. That's what's causing trafficking is porn. That's not true. It's just not true. And in fact, there are so many studies that say when people have access to different things to be able to express their sexuality, that there's less harm, that there's less danger. But we especially see folks saying, well, we need to protect our children. We need to protect our children from the internet. And so we need to make sure that we have all of these laws and all of these rules that are going to be protecting the kids on the internet. When they're not putting the emphasis on, hey, parents, you need to be making sure that you're watching your kids. And you need to make sure that you're building boundaries and rules surrounding what your kids are able to consume and what they can't.
We want to blame someone else.
Right.
Like we want to blame the thing instead of taking accountability. Yeah. Right.
And the issue too is with that kind of thinking is they're taking away like the free speech and the freedom of information from everyone because they're trying to protect children. But what about the kids' access to information? And what about the kids' access to content? And I think that like it's interesting because we have so many folks that are just trying to put blanket actions out there that they think are going to be supporting or helping people in the industry, but they're not only harming people in the industry, they're harming us as a society as well, and opening us all up to a lot of cost to implementing these kind of solutions and a lot of privacy risks. It's just not the best idea.
No, and this is my thing. Like, I had this realization at one point. I had a lot of black and white thinking, like a lot of people, and it's very easy to get trapped in black and white because that gives us the certainty that we need to feel safe and asleep, so to speak. So I got like a revelation of some sort that was like, okay, Brittany, do you support the gay community? And this relates to what we're talking about. Oh, sorry. It's my cat. Do you support the gay community? Yeah. No question. Should gay people have rights to get married? Should it be criminalized to be gay? No. Get out of here. That's ridiculous. Okay, does that mean that you want to be gay? Because that was the issue. If you supported the gay community, there was this thing about, well, you must be kind of gay. It was really seems ridiculous now, but it's not so much. So we have this thing, at least I do, like if I support something, that means I have to do it, or that's me, or this or that. It sounds silly, but just because you support sex workers and you want them to have rights for safety, it doesn't mean, or people who are doing, people doing porn, there's all kinds of sex work. That doesn't mean you have to participate. That doesn't mean it's not the same thing. It's just giving people a freedom that you want to have, having a freedom to speak out politically and say you don't like the orange man, or speak out and do this and not get shot, because we have laws that are protecting you. They need them too. So it was something I was thinking about before this conversation, because I really meditated on this episode. It just felt like, to me, it's like, just because you support people doesn't mean you got to go sign up and go, and do it, or you're sending your son out. It's not that it's bad anyway, but if you think it is, that's fine. But these women and men who are doing the work deserve protection, just period.
Yeah, and really making sure that we're considering our stances on things and holding them up to ourselves and looking at ourselves in the mirror and deciding, like, is this actually what I'm aligned with? And if so, why? Instead of just jumping onto whatever everyone else is talking about or believing in or saying that they're supporting, really taking time to make sure that we're establishing a list of morals or understandings for ourselves of what we actually believe in and what we don't believe in. And I know for a lot of folks, like, we were all raised to believe in specific things, and it's important to unlearn those things and to really think critically about what we believe in and why we believe in it.
It is. And then going from there and deciding, well, what do I want? Not what mommy and daddy and the big man upstairs with thunderbolts told me I wanted. What do I want? What is okay for me? What do I desire? What turns me on? And what am I okay with? What do I want to co-sign and say that and it's actually more things than not that I think people should have freedom with. Yeah, it doesn't mean I want to participate and that's what I want to do, but I believe people deserve. It's like abortion was illegal. We had an episode on Planned Parenthood. It was very illegal. People didn't have rights to do what they wanted with their body. It was dangerous. They were dying in childbirth, just all these things. And this is another case of a dangerous thing. And trafficking, I want to ask you this, because what does trafficking look like in these situations?
Yeah. A lot of people think, when they think of trafficking, they're thinking about Liam Neeson and that movie Taken, where people are kidnapped and they're thrown into trunks of cars and locked in dog cages, things like that. And unfortunately, we see those situations much more often than I would like to. They do exist. The majority of trafficking in the United States is actually folks that are trafficked by their families. So grandmas, grandpas, dads, moms, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunties, cousins that are trafficking their own family members for money, for places to live, food, things like that. And most of the time, that trafficking has been going on within that home generationally for a long time. And I think it's interesting because we all have this like idea of what trafficking looks like and what it is. And unfortunately, when we are not educated on what's actually going on, we are not ever really trying to end the problem, because we can't end up solving what we are refusing to define. You can't defeat what you are unwilling to define. And so Cupcake Girls is really clear on the roots of trafficking. They are racism, capitalism, colonialism, and the patriarchy. And we see those things acting out within our society in multiple different ways. But people don't want to sit with that or think about that. They don't want to think about the fact that a family might be experiencing poverty. And so they don't have a safe person around all the time, because that safe person is working to be able to pay for rent. And so in our society, when kids are alone for a long time, right, we call it neglect, and then we get CPS involved. And when we're looking at the amount of kiddos in our foster care system that are abused or they are trafficked, it's horrific. And just looking at the cycles that we are creating within our society that are creating this opportunity for crime and for harm and for trafficking is important. So the majority of trafficking is from family members. And then the other thing that we see is a lot of the times somebody that people love, somebody that they think that they're in a relationship with.
Right.
So a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, that is selling the other person for sex. Excuse me.
No, you're good.
And then making a profit from that person. And so we see a lot of the times people not understanding that the person that they're with is actually trafficking them. They'll think like, no, it's my husband and he loves me. And maybe they have like some domestic violence issues or something like that. But he's trying really hard, and like he would never hurt me. He would never want anything to harm me. And we see a lot of those cases because there isn't a clear understanding of what trafficking is. We haven't really defined it very well. And so people get confused. They don't really understand that the experience that they're in is sex trafficking.
So the difference. Oh, I'm so sorry. But the difference I'm hearing is with sex workers and like a pimp or a manager, there's consent. There's a relationship. I want to do this. Great. Here you go. Here's a client. With trafficking, it's a spectrum. It could get really dark, as we've seen on the news. But with trafficking, it seems like it's more like it's taking your rights away. You don't have a choice as much, if not any. Is that correct?
Yeah. So trafficking is essentially like if there is force, fraud, or coercion involved in the sex work experience or within that relationship, that is a trafficking experience.
Okay.
If you're able to consent to the situation, if you're able to say like, yep, this is what I'm wanting to do, they're in charge of their money, they're in charge of who they spend their time with, they're in charge of all of the documentation that they hold, so driver's license, passport, social security cards, things like that. They decide when they're working, when they're not working. That is considered to be a consensual situation. When you do not have access to your own money, when you do not have access to who you're spending your time with, when you don't have access to when you're working, how often you're working, that's considered to be a trafficking situation.
Thank you for explaining that. I've never heard that before, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't want to use the word I keep wanting to say because there's a lot of sensitivity around the SL, and well, I'll say it, enslavement. I don't want to, but that essentially there's an essence of that, taking away of freedom, with all due respect, for history. But it seems like you've lost you're not in charge of your money. And if you're out there, I hope you're hearing this. If you're not in charge of your money, you're not in charge of your freedoms, you're not a 1099, ladies and gentlemen, you may be in a trafficking situation. And I think it's good that we're talking about this, because I was just curious about, because, we do have the Liam Neeson kind of thing. So people don't know.
Yeah, and folks are like, oh, I'm not being trafficked. Like, I'm not chained up to anything or anything like that. But something that I've heard often over the last 10 years is this idea of chains on the brain. There's some physical chains, but there's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of coercion. There's a lot of this, this idea that you don't have access to your own autonomy. And that is a trafficking situation.
Well, and that's what we, the more we're like you said, getting the information out there, bringing clarity. And it's beautiful what we're doing here today and what you do in general. So what are the long-term goals, like, of the Cupcake Girls as of now? Where are you guys at with what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, the main issue that we're trying to solve is trafficking. We want to make sure trafficking is eradicated, and we believe that we're going to be able to do that as we have more access to resources, and as we're able to connect folks to those resources. Then we want to see all sex workers empowered. So what we're trying to do right now is make sure that we have a significant amount of business partners that are willing to give us pro bono or discounted rates to their services. So lawyers and doctors, primarily custody or family law is a huge thing. But we're looking to make sure that in every single city, in every single state, we have access to resources that we're able to share with our participants.
Good. So you guys out there, if you're listening to this and you were led to this podcast and you are any of those things, and this is pulling on your heartstrings, you want to help, I'm sure there's a way you can reach out to the Cupcake Girls and offer your services to help, because it's just like back in the day, it was a witch hunt for the abortion people. It's a witch hunt for, it's been a witch hunt going on for years over our freedoms, for our bodies. So if you want to be a part of this, feel free to reach out to Amy Marie here, reach out to the Cupcake Girls. I would just really like to say thank you for being on today. And this is a lot of vulnerable information, a lot to take in. And I think I'm going to close it here because, we've really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people are wanting to reach us, you can email us at info@thecupcakegirls.org, or you can find us on our website at www.thecupcakegirls.org.
Yeah, and someone out there send her a pink cupcake. Amy Marie deserves it. Send her a pink cupcake. No, but I will post all the information below so that you can find the Cupcake Girls if you're led to support. And thank you for sitting in today with us and informing yourself with new information. And hopefully we stop casting the stones as much. Thank you, Amy Marie, for being on today, and good luck with your mission and what you guys are doing. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for being with us, and keep it red. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining the Life in Red today, where we embrace passion, confidence, and positive sexuality. Keep painting your journey in bold red strokes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us so that you never miss out on living your best red life. Ready for more? Stay passionate, stay red. See you next episode.